In a kingdom where healers shaped history, they're ranked from first class down to third. But outside the system, there's one healer bound by no rules. With powers beyond belief, always surrounded by powerful women, and always ready to heal if the price is right. The story kicks off with a girl named Lily gently rousing our protagonist Xenos, while she makes tea for them. In this world, a first-rate healer is celebrated as someone who can mend not just bodies, but the entire world. And the Kingdom of Hodges works hand in hand with healers to shape history. Their contributions have spurred the nation's growth and earned them high prestige. There is even a Royal Medical Institute where aspiring healers learn advanced healing magic, get licensed, and begin their careers. Yet somewhere in Hodges, an unorthodox healer without formal training makes his mark, a true badass named Xenos. Shortly after, we see Xenos wrap up healing a patient, who pays him and thanks him. Xenos simply says he'll heal anyone who can pay, and after the patient leaves, Lily asks if he's heading out on a house call today. He confirms and promises to be back by dark, while Lily mentions dinner will be waiting. Later, Lily prepares dinner when Carmilla stops by. Lily explains that the food isn't ready yet because she is working on a hearty stew. Carmilla, eager to eat, is told to leave it all to Lily, as she is destined to be Xenos' future bride. With that, Carmilla retreats to her room. Not long after, Zofia arrives at the clinic looking for Xenos. Lily tells her he's on a house call and decides to wait herself. She admits she came early hoping to have Xenos all to herself. Soon enough, Linga shows up too, keen on catching his attention. Lily gives her the same explanation, leaving Linga disappointed. She had planned to get close to Xenos in her own way. Zofia urges Linga to step back, but she refuses to budge. Their bickering is finally cut short when Lily reminds them it is her duty to wait for Xenos. Then Lo enters and announces she's here to have fun with Xenos. Lily informs her that he is not around at the moment and tells her to fix the door she broke before coming in. When Lo finally steps inside, she is surprised to see everyone gathered there. She wonders if Lily's cooking has lured them all, and they tease her by saying she's the only one who would come here for a reason like that. Soon enough, we see that Lily is nearly finished with the cooking and adds a secret herb as the final touch. She tells everyone that dinner will start when Xenos returns and invites them to join at the table. Lily is excited to share the meal, but before that she goes out to collect the clothes drying outside. At the same time, the girls can't wait for dark because the food smells incredible. Lo and Linga slip into the kitchen to sample the stew. They simply can't resist once they realize how delicious it is. They try to explain that they were just having a quick taste, yet they can't seem to stop, even though Zofia warns they'll get scolded by Lily. In the end, even Zofia gives in and takes a bite. As Lily gathers the clothes both outside and near the kitchen, it becomes obvious that the girls have finished the entire stew. Realizing they might be in trouble, they start blaming one another for emptying the pot. They decide to act as if nothing happened, but that plan fails, so they agree to make another meal. Zofia suggests that they start by adding fresh ingredients to the pot. Just as Lily appears and asks what they're doing, the scene shifts to the dinner table where the girls try to feign ignorance, but Lily insists they tell the truth. They admit that the stew smelled so good they couldn't help themselves despite trying to hold back. Their hands acted on their own. Soon they notice how upset Lily is. The girls start arguing and blaming one another, and Lily orders them to stop or else Xenos will be angry when he returns. She explains that she only wanted to have a proper meal with Xenos and everyone else, and the girls quickly apologize, promising to help her cook. Lily then reveals that she only prepared enough ingredients for today. Just then, Carmilla bursts in, furious that they've eaten all of her stew. Linga immediately apologizes, and the others join in. Carmilla demands to know how they're going to make it up to her. She even jokes about eating their souls instead. Lily intervenes and instructs them to bring her the missing ingredients, and they agree to do so, leaving at once. Later, Lily realizes she's used up the last bit of her secret ingredient, and Carmilla asks if she isn't upset. Lily replies that she isn't very angry, which makes Carmilla admire her tolerance. Lily adds that she would have cursed them if they'd not only eaten her food, but also drank her wine, and she wonders if she can still prepare dinner before Xenos comes back. At the same time, we see Xenos in town. As he walks by, he notices a demi-human clutching her stomach in pain. Soon, her master appears, revealing that she is his slave and demands to know where she went. She explains that she suffered a stomachache and went to a clinic for treatment, but they refused to help her because she had no money. Her master, annoyed that she tried to rest over a minor stomachache, drags her back to work. Xenos observes as her master throws her onto a grave, muttering that dirty demi-humans like her belong in a graveyard. His rough treatment seems to summon a ghost. Oblivious to any supernatural sign, he orders her to get up by kicking her in the gut. But she can't rise because of the pain. Still ignoring her cries, he tells her to get to work digging graves. He warns that she will only get food if she manages to find any valuables. Suddenly, the slave attacks him, and blood begins to flow. Startled, he asks what she's doing. It quickly becomes clear that she is possessed, and he tries to run away. On his escape, he runs into Xenos again and begs for help, explaining that his slave has become violent. Xenos tells him to step aside, while the man points at his slave and demands to know what happened. Xenos then asks the nobleman about the last thing he requested from her. The damn tyrant replies that he simply told her to work as usual. When Xenos questions what kind of work that is, he hides the details by saying it was just some farm work. Changing the subject, he complains of his own injuries and begs Xenos to stop the slave, promising to pay him. The slave then attacks the noble, but Xenos intervenes and saves him. Xenos asks the slave why she is so angry. As she hurls stones at him, he easily dodges them. Impressed by his quick moves, the man orders Xenos to kill the slave. Xenos refuses, explaining that his duty is not to take lives. The noble, revealing that he is a noble himself, laments that if this continues he will die. He even says he would simply buy another slave if she dies. Yet Xenos remains firm, declaring that he will save every life he can because he is a healer. The deranged slave lunges at Xenos with a boulder, but he shatters it with his bare hands using some kind of enhancement. The noble watches in disbelief, wondering what type of healer he is, when suddenly the slave attacks him with lightning-fast movements enough to make Xenos doubt she's an ordinary demi-human. She then swipes at him with her claws, but he repels her with a barrier, noticing that his defense has seriously injured her. Still, the slave struggles on, fueled by nothing but hate, and Xenos realizes she's been possessed. He moves in close as she bites him. Surprised by the thought that ghosts can both consume and casually converse, he quickly deduces that some spirits can also possess others. With his magic, Xenos heals her wounds and expels the ghost from her body. Puzzled over what kind of farm work could lead to such possession, he then performs a full exorcism and declares his work done for the day. The noble, startled by how easily Xenos mended the slave's crushed foot, pleads for him to heal his own injuries. Xenos promises to treat him tomorrow, warning that if he waits any longer, he might not survive. The noble insists on immediate healing, but Xenos warns that the cost will be steep and asks if he's willing to pay. The noble hands over all the money he has, claiming it should suffice, but Xenos explains that it isn't enough. The noble grumbles that the fee is already above market rate, hinting that he'd suffer if charged illegally, but he adds that it won't matter since he knows Xenos works without a license. Surprised by the existence of unlicensed healers, Xenos comments that it's a shady business, not unlike grave robbing. The noble tries to act oblivious, but Xenos sees through him and declares that he'll deduct the cost of the slave from the fee. The noble agrees without objection, and Xenos proceeds to heal him, taking the slave's documents as part of the payment. After the noble departs, we later see the slave awakening. She's startled to see him and still suffers from stomach pain. When she asks who he is, he introduces himself as Xenos, explaining that he's effectively bought her. He then asks her name, and she tells him it's Tyru. Xenos orders her to remove her clothes, explaining that he spent a significant amount on her and needs to assess her condition. She's reluctant at first, but she still follows through, and he observes that her bile duct is blocked with gallstones and inflamed. Xenos then heals her in mere seconds, leaving Tyru astonished as she asks exactly what he did. He explains that he simply made a small incision in her stomach, removed all the gallstones, and then sutured it back up cleanly. She's taken aback that he didn't resort to any lengthy chanting or use intricate magic circles, and that his work left no trace at all. Xenos brushes it off, saying it's nothing extraordinary and that any skilled healer could manage this, but she insists that such a feat is far beyond what most could handle. Tyru expresses her heartfelt thanks for saving her and wonders how she might ever repay him. In response, Xenos reveals that he actually has a job for her. He shows her a detailed drawing of a rare herb and asks if she can track it down. Determined, she agrees and accompanies him. Before long, she finds the herb. It turns out to be the very same secret ingredient that Lily used in her cooking earlier. Xenos offers his sincere thanks, although Tyru feels it was a modest task and she had secretly hoped for a more significant challenge. But Xenos explains that his policy is to take payment commensurate with the work done. Despite her feeling that she barely did anything, he is content with her contribution, remarking that without her, he wouldn't have been able to manage. In a final gesture, he rips up her contract papers, declaring her free to choose her own path and do as she wishes. Uncertain about her future direction, Tairu promises that she'll return once she figures out what she truly wants to do. Zenos says his farewells, urging her to come see him if she ever gets hurt. Later that night, Zenos makes his way home, where Lily informs him that dinner is still not ready. Not long after, the three girls return after gathering ingredients, and Zenos can't help but wonder what they've been up to. They try to conceal the fact that they've already devoured his dinner, prompting Lily to decide to start cooking another meal. Zenos then retreats to another room. As he goes by, Carmilla catches a distinct scent of another woman on him, a clue that something interesting might have occurred. He tells her to be quiet, and Lily, busy preparing dinner, asks him to wait a little longer. But Zenos interrupts, requesting a cup of black tea instead. Realizing his need, Lily promptly agrees, announcing that she'll prepare a fresh cup right away. Back in the day, Zenos was part of a top-tier adventurer party. But one day the party leader Astan hurled a gold coin at him as a reminder of his poverty, kicking him out of the group. Astan called Zenos a worthless waste of space, insisting the party would be better off without him. Even though Zenos knew he was the glue holding them together, Astan wouldn't accept any counterargument. In reality, he had recruited Zenos just to use him as a human shield, figuring no one would care if the healer got killed in battle. Now that the party had grown stronger, Zenos tried to explain that their strength came from his healing abilities. Astan retorted that Zenos' self-taught, shady healing skills were worthless, and that any other healer could do a better job. Elsewhere in a dark alley, two slave traders were trying to restrain an elf girl so they could tie her up and sell her later. One of the women cautioned her partner to be careful with her since elves were rare. Keeping her in good condition would fetch a higher price. The man had already pinned her to the ground when the elf Lily refused to surrender without a fight, so she kicks him right where future generations get cancelled. Then she bolted. Her escape, however, was cut short when the man equipped with a bow shot her in the ankle. Lily collapsed, unable to run further, and the traitor quickly caught up to her. He attempted to subdue her once more, but Lily fought back fiercely, biting his hand as if determined to erase his presence. In a desperate move to free himself, the man ended up stabbing her. By chance, Zenos happened to be walking through that same alley and discovered Lily on the ground, bleeding. He demanded to know if these traitors were responsible. They snapped at him, telling him to buzz off since slavery was perfectly legal in this land, and, in their eyes, Lily was their property to do as they pleased. Legally, Zenos had little ground to stand on. Still, an idea sparked in his mind. He offered to buy Lily by handing them the gold coin he'd received from Astan. Most of the time they'd refuse after all. An elf slave was worth far more than a single coin. But seeing her condition and the fact that she was already bleeding out, they took the coin and left. After they're gone, Zenos walks over to Lily to check if she's still alive. Lily, resigned to her fate, tells him to just leave her be, but Zenos insists she isn't going to die. Looking down at her wound, Lily is surprised to see that Zenos has already healed her completely. She thanks him for his help and apologizes for the gold coin he spent to buy her, though Zenos admits he didn't really want to keep it, as it only reminds him of Astan. He asks if she has a home, but given her status as a slave, it's safe to assume she's broke and homeless. Noticing that she's also very hungry, Zenos offers to get her some food and clothes before anything else. Zenos ends up taking her to a nearby diner and even buys her a fresh set of clothes along the way. While Lily happily enjoys the meal, she's puzzled that he didn't order food for himself. Zenos explains that he isn't hungry, even though the truth is that he's really broke. He spent the last of his money on food and clothes for Lily, and after getting kicked out of Golden Phoenix, he's likely going to need a new job soon to avoid starvation. Just then, a man stumbles into the diner, visibly injured in his arm. It's clear he's been through some trouble by the wound's appearance, with a gaping hole and some mild burn marks. Zenos deduces that the man must have been shot by a magic gun. Although the man is a lizard person and his wound might normally heal on its own in a few days, the injury is deep enough that it needs immediate attention. Zenos stretches out his hand and casts a healing spell. Within seconds, the hole in the man's arm seals up perfectly. Startled by the sudden recovery, the man asks who Zenos is. Before Zenos can answer, Lily pipes up declaring that he's a badass healer. Though the man has never heard of Zenos before, he's grateful for the help and hands him a few coins, promising to spread the word. At first, Zenos is a bit confused about the payment, but then he remembers that healers usually get paid for their services. That sparks an idea. He decides to open a clinic and become a professional healer. However, since he hails from the slums, obtaining an official healing license would be difficult. That's why Zenos opts to become an underground healer. Lily doesn't fully catch what Zenos is rambling about, but if he's planning to open a clinic, she's all in to help him out. Zenos pauses to consider the idea. Knowing that starting a clinic without a license is against the law, he's not sure it's right to rope an innocent kid into such shady business. Still, Lily reminds him that he bought her just minutes ago, which in her eyes makes him her master. Therefore, she's bound to stick by him no matter how many rules he breaks. Though Zenos never intended to become her master, he only wanted to assist her. Lily points out that she has nowhere else to go. If he leaves her behind, it'll be his fault if she ends up back as a slave. After some thought, Zenos relents and agrees to let Lily join him. Overjoyed, she swears to serve him with every fiber of her being, though he quickly tells her not to make things awkward. Realizing that setting up a clinic also means he needs to sort out his own homelessness, Zenos takes Lily to an abandoned part of the city in search of a place to stay. Curious, Lily asks why he wants to live there. Zenos explains that he needs to keep a low profile, so the Royal Association won't catch wind of his illegal clinic. Plus the perfect price for his wallet that's been socially distancing from money. Although Lily can't argue with that logic, she's still uneasy. Knows that creepy monsters tend to haunt places like these. Eventually, they find a house that's still in decent shape, and Zenos thinks he's hit the stars finally lined up. However, the moment Lily lays eyes on it, she is terrified because this looks like a haunted house starter pack. She worries that if they get unlucky, they might even run into a wraith. Zenos, clueless about what a wraith is, listens as Lily explains that wraiths are terrifying undead beings capable of turning people into ghosts with just a touch. They step inside, but the darkness forces Lily to use her basic magic to light up the room. Zenos is surprised that she can cast spells at all, though he quickly notes that her tricks aren't very advanced. Once the room is illuminated, they see everything clearly. It's just as rundown as Lily feared, but Zenos stays optimistic. The roof is solid and the support pillars are sturdy overall. It's perfect for setting up his underground clinic. Nonetheless, they encounter one major problem. There's actually a wraith in the house, and it threatens to drain Zenos of his life force. Lily panics, while Zenos is more disappointed that the house came pre-haunted by something with no chill. Suddenly, Carmilla charges at him, but he effortlessly repels her with a healing spell that ends up destroying both of her arms. He isn't at all intimidated by Carmilla back in his Golden Phoenix days. Aston would send him into the labyrinth alone whenever he was in a foul mood, and Zenos had run into countless wraiths there, defeating at least 100 of them. It turns out that healing magic works pretty effectively against undead monsters. Returning to the matter at hand, Zenos apologizes to Carmilla for barging into what appears to be her domain, but explains that there are no other options nearby. He asks if she's alright with him moving in. Carmilla feels insulted that Zenos would even suggest sharing her space, the so-called Queen of Wraiths, and she summons a host of ghost servants to drive him out. Without flinching, Zenos casually uses a high-level healing spell to wipe them all out. Stunned by Zenos' power and beginning to worry he might exorcise her, Carmilla eventually concedes. Not wanting to fight, Zenos asks if she's willing to let him and Lily have at least one bedroom, along with a space to treat future patients. Realizing she can't beat him, Carmilla agrees to let them have the first floor while she keeps the second floor for herself. Zenos thinks that arrangement works out pretty well, though Lily isn't sure whether to be more scared of Zenos or Carmilla. By the next morning, with no patients around, Lily grows bored and asks Zenos if she should either go outside to do some advertising or maybe even kick someone's ass. Zenos, however, advises against it, worried the Royal Hospital might eventually catch wind of their operation. Besides, he's confident it won't be long before they get their first customer. Sure enough, a few seconds later, someone walks in. Lily eagerly rises to greet their first customer and is surprised to see that it's the same guy Zenos healed the day before. Zenos had been expecting him sooner or later after all. Law-abiding citizens don't usually get hit by magic bullets, and people like him would rather avoid the traditional hospital scene for obvious reasons. The man introduces himself as Zond and says he needs Zenos to check on his sister. Zenos agrees to help, and Zofia shows him a minor flesh wound on her arm. She explains that her arm has been acting weird since yesterday, and after one look, Zenos deduces that she was hit by a magic attack laced with poison. Zofia asks if there's anything he can do, but since she endured the wound all night, most of the tissue in her arm is dead. Zenos tells her it's best to amputate the entire arm to prevent the poison from spreading. Although disappointed at the thought of losing an arm, Zofia asks how much it will cost to have it removed. Zenos says she'll need to pay 1,000,000 yen, which immediately infuriates Zond. He finds it outrageous for such a simple procedure. Just as he's ready to start a fight over the price, Zofia intervenes and tries to negotiate with Zenos. She questions whether he really wants to charge so much when she's known as Zofia the Tornado, the leader of one of the 3 gangs in the area, a fact Zenos is well aware of. Yet, he refuses to do the work for free, especially since regeneration takes a lot of effort. Zofia is baffled, having never heard of a healer who could regenerate limbs, and Zenos is equally puzzled, as his self-taught method is something he hasn't seen in other healers. Not knowing what the standard is, he simply asks if she wants to proceed with the procedure. Zofia agrees without hesitation. Zenos then lays her on a table and prepares to amputate her arm. He conjures a magic scalpel, a blade of condensed magic that appears at will. It's super sharp and completely sterile, making it ideal for surgery, though most healers can't perform such feats. He begins the operation by continuously channeling healing magic to numb the area. He then swiftly amputates the infected arm and ramps up his healing power to regenerate a new one. Layer by layer, he rebuilds Zofia's arm until it's as good as new and stops acting weird. Amazed and grateful that Zenos successfully regenerated her arm, Zofia no longer objects to the price. She even promises to send her injured subordinates to him for treatment. Far as Zenos is concerned, if they're throwing coin, they can be as weird as they want. In the days that followed, Zenos was busy treating numerous patients from the Lizardman faction, so Lily brewed some tea to help him relax. Grateful for her thoughtfulness, Zenos couldn't help but wonder why she prepared 3 cups instead of 2. Lily explained that one was for Carmilla, though Zenos wasn't entirely sure if Carmilla would join them until he learned that she actually loves tea. While taking a break, Lily asked Zenos if he'd any idea why the Lizardmen kept getting injured so badly. Based on what he'd seen, he suspected that a turf war was raging between various factions. Then out of nowhere, one faction literally broke through the door. A pack of werewolves stormed into the clinic, and their leader Linga declared that she was determined to kill Zenos. She'd been fighting the Lizardmen for days, and no matter how many she injured, they'd always recovered, so she set her sights on eliminating their healer. For one, Zenos wasn't even affiliated with the Lizardmen, and he preferred avoiding violence. Yet Linga had already ordered her crew to kill him. Despite their ferocity, his defensive magic kept him immovable, unable to be harmed. Realizing brute force wasn't working, Linga resorted to demolishing the clinic. That plan quickly backfired, as the building was also Carmilla's residence, something she wouldn't tolerate being destroyed. The moment Linga and her pack saw the Queen of the Wraiths, Carmilla, fear gripped them, knowing a Wraith was among them, an enemy they could never defeat. Carmilla, infuriated by their intrusion, was ready to drain them of their life force, but Zenos intervened, urging her to calm down. He explained that he didn't want anyone to die in his clinic, noting that none of the attackers had even reached the 2nd floor. As long as Linga and her men agreed to fix the damage, he promised to let it go. Seeing that the Queen of the Wraiths had listened to him, Linga immediately began pleading for forgiveness. Then the next morning, an orc popped into the clinic like he owned the place, saying Lo, the big boss of the orcs, wanted a word with Zenos. At the same moment, Zenos saw this coming eventually, especially since he'd already handled 2 other slum bosses. Lo was the boss of the orcs and ogres, and she'd raked in a ton of cash mining mana stones with brute force, making her a pretty big shot around these parts. At least after he dealt with her, nobody else would dare cause trouble around his shop anymore, so he figured he might as well just handle it now. But before heading out, Zenos asked the orc if Lo was the reasonable type. The orc assured him Lo was easily the wisest, most respectable person he'd ever encounter. Hearing that put Zenos at ease, though it left him curious why Lo hadn't come along herself. The orc explained that right now, she couldn't exactly move. That sounded pretty serious, prompting Zenos to immediately hurry out to meet his newest patient. The orc guided him into a cave and introduced him to Lo. She was glad to finally see him in person. But before doing anything else, Zenos asked how she'd even found out about him. Lo explained the Lizardmen and werewolves had been running their mouths non-stop about some super secret healer they definitely weren't supposed to talk about. That pretty much ruined the whole underground part of being an underground healer, but Zenos would just have to sort that out later. From what Lo heard, Zenos could patch up anyone for a decent price, no matter how bad the injury, and she wanted to see if he really lived up to the hype. As Zenos approached her and raised his hand, Lo wondered aloud what exactly he was up to. Zenos calmly explained that since he couldn't see any injuries externally, he was scanning her to detect internal damage. Loa was impressed, noting most healers couldn't do something like that. Zenos, however, considered this basic common sense. It wasn't exactly helpful treating someone without knowing what's happening inside their body. Once Zenos finished scanning her, he noticed a lump inside Loa's stomach. and since he felt mana radiating from it, he figured it was a mana stone. Lo confirmed he was right, and said this stone specifically was enchanted with explosive magic, meaning that if she moved even slightly, she'd probably explode. Zenos asked if someone had tried assassinating her by sneaking the stone into her food, but Lo insisted nothing that dramatic had happened. She'd simply been starving, mistaken the mana stone for a rice ball, and swallowed it whole. But Zenos didn't see any reason to panic, casually noting that sooner or later, a mana stone would always find its own way out. Zenos gets set to leave, but Loa stops him, saying it ain't that simple. Turns out, when she swallowed that mana stone, she kinda chewed it up a bit, meaning there isn't much time before it goes boom. She's pretty much accepted that her mistake's gonna cost her life. Her only worry is her guys refuse to leave her side. Zenos wonders aloud what exactly Lo expects him to do, so she explains she just wanted him here to hand over her fortune. Once she blows, that's curtains for the entire orc empire she built, so she'd rather give all that cash to someone who'll use it right instead of letting it end up in sketchy hands. While digging around on Zenos, Loa discovered that even though he charges top dollar for healing, he has a rule about fixing up kids free of charge. She tosses him a key, saying he can use it to get into her treasure vault after she's gone. But Zenos never agreed to just let her go out like that. Considering she hasn't exploded yet, she must have swallowed the stone pretty recently. Without hesitation, he summons his scalpel and strides right over. Without a word, Zenos starts slicing into Loa's abdomen, causing her crew to panic at first, until he suddenly holds up the explosive mana stone. In just a few seconds flat, he managed to open her up, pull out the stone, and patch her back together, completely defusing the risk. But the mana stone is still ready to explode any second, so for everyone's safety, Zenos squeezes it tightly in his hands until it detonates. The blast is strong enough to level an entire city, but Zenos protects himself by casting defensive magic around his hands. He's totally fine, although honestly, it hurt like hell. He tosses the key back to Lo, telling her she doesn't need to worry about donating her wealth anymore. Lo is still trying to wrap her head around the fact Zenos really chose to save her life instead of grabbing the money. But he shrugs, telling her he only expects fair compensation for healing. An entire fortune would have been overkill. Loa decides right then that she really likes Zenos, promising him that if he ever needs backup, just say the word and she'll throw everything she's got behind him. She even offers to have her crew guard his clinic. But Zenos figures it's smarter to keep his distance. Having Loa's men hanging around is a guaranteed recipe for trouble. A few days pass, and Lily's moping around at the front desk, because lately, Zofia, Linga, and Lo have been hanging around the clinic way more than usual. Come to think of it, Zenos realizes they've been popping up constantly, even though none of them ever seems hurt. He figures they're probably just bored, but Carmilla straight up tells him it's obvious those women have a thing for him. Zenos can't wrap his head around why they'd fall for a regular underground healer like him, but Carmilla insists she knows exactly what she's talking about. Lily worries one of them might start dating Zenos and hogging all his attention, but Zenos quickly assures her he'd never date any of those weirdos anyway. Still, Carmilla thinks it's only a matter of time before those three go full-blown battle royale to see who gets Zenos all to herself. Zenos doubts things could ever escalate that far, but literally the following day, Zofia walks in with a fruit basket, casually mentioning she's about to declare war against the other factions for some vague reason. Right after her, Linga and Lowe's do the exact same thing. No matter how loudly Zenos protests, none of them listen. Carmilla finds this hilarious, jokingly blaming Zenos' irresistible charm for all the bloodshed that's about to happen. But Zenos really isn't cool with how she's phrasing it. The big showdown is scheduled for noon today, and Zenos can't let them murder each other because of him. He's gotta step in and do something fast. Over at the stadium, the three girls and their crews are already geared up and ready to start a full-on massacre. Just before the bloodshed kicks off, Zenos suddenly strolls in. Everyone turns to hear what he's got to say, but Zenos surprises them all by announcing he's not here to stop the fight. Since they clearly have old grudges against each other, he tells them to fight it out until everyone's satisfied. With Zenos' green light, the girls all agree to go all out. Whoever's left standing at the end gets to claim Zenos' stick as the grand prize. Zenos definitely doesn't recall agreeing to that last bit, but before he can object, the chaos is already underway. Zofia lunges first, aiming her daggers at Linga's neck, but Linga dodges swiftly, flipping out of the way just in time. Right then, Lo leaps in to deliver a flying kick to Zofia, but Zofia sidesteps, and a bunch of random bystanders get flattened instead. Zofia and Linga clash again, but before they can land solid blows, Lo drops down from above, nearly flattening them both. The impact sends Zofia tumbling into the orc section of the arena, prompting her to attack the orcs immediately, and soon enough, all three sides are throwing down against each other's factions. It's total carnage out there, with people getting sliced up left and right. But somehow, even after battling non-stop for 6 hours, no one's actually died yet. Suddenly, Zofia notices the injuries on her arms are magically closing up, and Xenos casually mentions he's been behind it the whole time. He agreed to let them have their dramatic death match, but he definitely wasn't about to let anyone actually die, especially since they're still technically his patients. Zofia feels pretty dumb for not noticing Xeno's trick earlier, but to be fair, none of them ever imagined a healer could treat so many injuries at once, especially continuously for over 6 straight hours. They finally get it. At this rate, the fight's never gonna end, which is exactly what Xenos wanted them to realize. Unless they can learn to chill out and get along, they'll never have any peace. But hey, if they're really dead set on continuing this nonsense, he'll just keep healing them endlessly. And yeah, he's definitely billing them for every minute. Now feeling kinda embarrassed, the girls finally understand how ridiculous it was to start a whole war over basically nothing. They quickly agree to put their grudges aside and start fresh from now on. Of course, they'll still fight over Xenos, but at least this time, they've promised to keep things strictly non-lethal. At the same time, Lily asks Xenos why he bothered going through all that trouble. Xenos remembers something his teacher once told him: a healer who can only patch wounds is third-rate. Someone who can restore the entire body is second-rate. But a first-rate healer actually makes the world around him better. Xenos doubts he's got what it takes to be a first-rate healer, but he still wants to try improving the slums a bit. Plus, if he'd let everyone wipe each other out, he'd run out of patients to treat, which wouldn't exactly be great for business. Or at least that's what he claims, but Lily sees right through him. She knows he's just acting casual to hide how deeply he cares. After all, if the demi-humans stop fighting each other and start getting along, his clinic's patient numbers would drop like crazy, and yet he helped them anyway. That's exactly why Lily likes Xenos so much, and she tells him this straight to his face. But of course Xenos doesn't really get what she means. Anyway, it's getting pretty late, so Xenos decides to head out, collect his payment, and call it a day. Lily's surprised. She thought he was joking earlier about charging them for all the healing he did during the fight. But nope, Xenos is dead serious. Treating that many people for hours straight is exhausting, so obviously he's expecting to get paid. Over in the capital, the commander of the Royal Knights is having a little chat with his vice commander Krishna. Krishna asks if something's up, and the commander mentions he caught wind of a strange rumor. The war between the demi-humans has suddenly come to a halt. Krishna's shocked. They've been battling over the slums for years, so it's hard to believe they'd just randomly decide to play nice now. Honestly, the commander isn't buying it either. But if the rumor checks out, he'll need to step in. The kingdom has stayed stable with the royals and nobility on top, because the poor, unfairly treated folks are usually too busy fighting each other to threaten the status quo. If they start cooperating, though, they might band together and demand stuff like universal healthcare, and obviously nobody at the top wants that. Rumor has it one individual is responsible for bringing peace to the demi-humans, so the commander assigns Krishna to handle the situation personally. Krishna understands clearly and vows she'll track down this dangerous individual and arrest him immediately for the terrible crime of promoting peace. Over at Xenos' clinic, he sneezes cause folks been talking about him. Soon as that happens, the whole place starts tripping, thinking he's about to catch something nasty. Linga jumps in and says he can use her tail if he needs something warm and fuzzy. Then Lowell, with a smirk, says she's got a spot that's even warmer if he's feeling cold around the face. Xenos doesn't even blink. He tells them it's just a sneeze and he still needs to fix up Zofia, so they better chill till he's done. Once her arm is healed, Zofia thanks him, but it's been a minute since she's needed his help, so Xenos asks what happened this time. She tells him she got hurt while pulling a job last night. Turns out, Zofia's been stealing from corrupt nobles and passing the goods along to the folks who need it. But during a break-in yesterday, she ran into the vice commander of the Royal Knights, a loose cannon named Krishna. This woman doesn't ask questions. She pulls up with magic fire guns and blasts first. Carmilla's got a bad feeling about it. If Zofia ran into Krishna, and Krishna gets wind of Xenos, things could get messy. But Xenos isn't too concerned. He figures someone that high up wouldn't waste time worrying about some underground healer in the slums. Meanwhile, Krishna is already in the slums digging for info. She notices the demi-humans aren't fighting anymore, which feels suspicious, so she corners a lizard man and demands to know who brought the factions together. The lizard man has no idea who she is, and since Xenos has been trying to stay under the radar, he plays dumb. He tries to walk off, but Krishna draws her gun and tells him she'll shoot if he doesn't talk. He stands firm and tells her to go ahead, he'd take a bullet before selling Xenos out. At that moment, Zofia and her brother happen to walk by. Krishna takes one look at him and decides this is not the time for a fight. She makes a quick getaway and ends up lost in the rundown part of the city. By sheer accident, she stumbles across Xenos' clinic and steps in to ask for directions. Xenos doesn't recognize her and says he's happy to help her find her way back. But right then, Lily walks out holding a tray of tea, and as soon as Krishna spots her elf ears, she instantly whips out her gun and shoots Xenos in the head.